Now, there is no doubt about it that Snow White 2025 is considered by far one of the worst box office failures.
What if one of Disney's most iconic fairy tales was suddenly mired in so much chaos that even its own creators seemed ready to distance themselves from it? That's the unsettling rumor swirling around Snow White 5. Once hailed as a bold reimagining of the beloved 1937 classic, it now teeters on the edge of disaster. From canceled premieres to feuding stars, and even the possibility of skipping Disney Plus entirely, this adaptation has turned into a whirlwind of accusations and speculation. But is there more to the story than meets the eye? Strap in, because what began as a routine live-action remake has spiraled into one of the most talked-about fiascos in modern Hollywood history, and we're about to reveal every riveting detail. But don't think this is just another behind-the-scenes drama. Controversies erupted before the cameras even stopped rolling. Industry watchers claim it's one of the costliest nightmares Disney has faced in recent years. Insiders, fans, and even casual moviegoers are dissecting every rumored dispute and script change. And still, no one's certain where the movie will ultimately land, or how badly the damage runs. So what really happened, and can this project find a path to redemption? Let's unravel the madness piece by piece. The first clear signal that Snow White 2025 was in trouble came when Disney abruptly canceled its highly anticipated UK premiere. This move was more than a scheduling quirk. It was an alarm bell that left fans and critics scratching their heads. For a mega studio that usually loves glitzy red carpet showcases, especially for a marquee property like Snow White, pulling the plug at the last minute felt like a giant neon sign screaming, "Danger, ahead." Why would Disney back away from a high-profile event, especially after funneling millions into pre-release buzz? The hush whispers pointed to an avalanche of negative press. Rumors circulated that top executives didn't want reporters questioning star Rachel Zegler's recent remarks about the original film's so-called outdated themes. There was also talk of on-set conflicts so severe that even the bigwigs feared public embarrassment. While the official story suggested scheduling conflicts, industry insiders weren't buying it. Word got around fast. Suddenly, the phrase Snow White fiasco took hold, and entertainment blogs lit up with speculation that the production had become a ticking time bomb. Some chalked it up to lukewarm test screenings. Others blamed the cast's personal feuds. But no matter how you sliced it, the canceled UK premiere signaled an ominous start to what should have been a celebratory rollout. And as we'll see, this was no isolated mishap. It was merely the opening salvo in a storm of controversies. But that's only the beginning. As insiders dug deeper, they discovered friction that went well beyond scheduling snafus and marketing missteps. The worst, it turned out, was still to come. Few could have predicted that Rachel Zegler, initially welcomed as a fresh-faced talent, would become a lightning rod for criticism. Early in production, she praised Disney for modernizing Snow White, urging audiences to move past what she described as the story's outdated tropes. In a series of interviews, she dropped hints that the classic 1937 film was too simplistic for modern sensibilities, and that this adaptation would have a more empowered version of the heroine. But the real uproar exploded when her quotes about the original film went viral. She mentioned that she found the 1937 story unrelatable, implying it lacked the nuance that modern audiences crave. Devout Disney fans felt stung. This was not just any property, but the revered starting point of Disney's animated legacy. Online forums lit up with accusations that Zegler was taking potshots at a cherished piece of cultural history. Memes sprang up, painting her as an ungrateful newcomer who disrespected the role that put her on the map. For her part, Zegler seemed caught off guard by the backlash. Some sources claim she was genuinely shocked by how quickly her words were misinterpreted. Others insist she doubled down, confident that Snow White 2025 represented a much-needed upgrade to a dated plot. Either way, the damage was done. Fans who'd once been curious about her casting were now openly hostile, slamming both Zegler's "oh" comments and Disney's broader strategy. Subreddits dedicated to Disney classics saw daily threads decrying her statements, and YouTube channels capitalized on the controversy with titles like "Has Rachel Zegler doomed Snow White?" and "Woke, remake sinks before release." Before long, the negativity ballooned into a full-scale PR crisis, overshadowing any excitement about the film's updated storyline or star power. Worse yet, Zegler's interviews also fueled speculation that the new script deviated wildly from the original fairy tale. That sense of disrespecting a beloved piece of animation history combined with the actress's own brash remarks, stirred the pot like never before. But believe it or not, this rocky patch was just the start. Conflict wasn't confined to Zegler's uneasy relationship with Disney diehards. It soon spilled over onto the set, leading to an even more dramatic confrontation. If Rachel Zegler's public comments put Snow White 5 on shaky ground, her rumored discord with co-star Gal Gadot threatened to tear the production apart from the inside. At first glance, the pairing seemed like a match made in Hollywood heaven, a bright up-and-comer alongside a globally recognized superstar. Yet whispers soon emerged that these two leads were never on the same page, and that their professional differences morphed into personal resentments. Word around the industry suggested that Zegler wanted to adhere to a strict interpretation of the revised script, maintaining Snow White's storyline as the film's undisputed focal point. Meanwhile, Gadot, playing the evil queen, often improvised lines to explore a darker, more menacing angle. Insiders say some of these improvs shifted attention away from Zegler's character, sparking friction. A pivotal fortress scene meant to highlight Snow White's moral victory over the queen's tyranny reportedly devolved into repeated takes because the two actresses couldn't agree on the tone or pacing. It didn't help that both were under immense pressure. Zegler, as a newcomer, yearned to assert her place and prove she wasn't just a one-hit wonder. Gadot, accustomed to blockbuster franchises, seemed to chafe at any suggestion she toned down her star power. Tension escalated during night shoots, where exhaustion and time constraints magnified every small disagreement. Crew members described it as walking on eggshells, never sure if a scene would wrap on schedule or implode due to clashing egos. At one point, rumors even claimed security had to intervene when arguments became too heated, though official statements deny this. Nonetheless, the tension was palpable enough that other cast members reportedly tiptoed around interactions with either lead. In an environment that thrived on collaborative creativity, these stalemates brought filming to a standstill multiple times. Insiders claimed that producers were growing increasingly concerned about the ballooning budget, which spiked every time the schedule slipped. But the real cost might have been intangible, a loss of morale that no rewrite or marketing push could fully remedy. And if you think personality clashes were the worst problem this production faced, think again. The script itself soon became a battlefield, with constant rewrites and reshoots bleeding resources and patience. Keep watching, because this saga only gets stranger. Producing a major Hollywood film often means accepting some level of script revision, but Snow White 2025 took revision to dizzying extremes. According to those with knowledge of the project, the screenplay underwent no fewer than 3 major overhauls. Greta Gerwig, who contributed to the writing, faced a monumental task, bridging the gap between Disney's desire to modernize the fairy tale and fans' expectations for a faithful homage. After every wave of negative press, like the cancelled UK premiere or Zegler's controversial remarks, studio executives demanded more changes. Some script updates were intended to mitigate backlash, such as toning down overt references to the 1937 film's problematic elements. Others addressed deeper structural issues, pacing problems, comedic beats that fell flat, or entire subplots that felt too politically charged. With each rewrite, new complications emerged. Scenes that worked in one version made zero sense in another. Lines that once felt snappy suddenly felt forced. Multiple reshoot phases followed. Scheduling these reshoots was a nightmare, especially given Gadot's busy calendar and Zegler's fresh obligations with other studios. Crew members found themselves hopping between sets for months, unsure if they'd return yet again for the next fix. Morale dipped further when rumors spread that the final version still felt disjointed, hinting all these efforts might not even pay off. One legendary fiasco revolved around a grand confrontation scene in the Queen's Fortress, originally designed to showcase Snow White's moral triumph. It got filmed, scrapped, then refilmed a year later, only to be cut again due to continuity glitches. Each iteration introduced fresh controversies. A new costume design that clashed with earlier footage, changes in lighting that made the sequence look like it belonged in a different movie, and newly written dialogue that contradicted earlier lines. The result? Thousands of work hours wasted, ballooning costs, and heightened tensions among everyone involved. To outsiders, it appeared that Disney was trapped in a cycle of frantic damage control, with each rewrite intended to plug a new hole in the sinking ship. But ironically, these hasty fixes only poked more holes. The question looming over the entire production became, Could Snow White 2025 survive its own never-ending metamorphosis, or would it collapse under the weight of conflicting visions? But the turmoil didn't stop at script pages. Tensions among the cast and crew reached a fever pitch, culminating in rumors that even everyday interactions had turned toxic. That's where we're headed next. When the on-set atmosphere becomes fraught, even the most mundane details can spark a crisis. According to multiple insiders, working on Snow White 5 felt like navigating a minefield. Key department heads, costume, set design, choreography, found themselves constantly adjusting their plans at the last minute due to the script's shifting directives. Tempers flared as creative teams were asked to scrap weeks of work to accommodate brand new sequences that might also be cut a week later. It didn't help that stories of Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot's conflicts trickled down the production hierarchy. Some staff aligned with Zegler, believing her critiques of the original film were justified and that her unwavering commitment to the new vision was admirable. Others took Gadot's side, praising her adaptability and star power. In the middle, a silent majority just wanted the movie completed without further chaos. Each newly revised script arrived like a ticking bomb, leaving everyone scrambling to keep up. If you were in hair and makeup, for instance, you might have to rework an entire look because a major scene got replaced overnight. The fortress sequence fiasco became legendary, so much so that people started calling it the scene that never ends. Many had pinned their creative hopes on it, an opportunity to wow audiences with top-notch visual effects and jaw-dropping character moments. But repeated tries led to repeated failures. Ultimately, it was cut altogether, fueling resentment among those who'd poured time and passion into it. Rachel Zegler was said to be livid because she considered that scene the emotional bedrock of her performance, highlighting Snow White's bravery and moral resolve. In her eyes, the constant tinkering stripped away the most powerful aspect of her character arc. As frustration mounted, there was talk of producing an entirely new ending to avoid further continuity issues. The concept of an alternative climactic battle circulated briefly, though it never materialized. Each rumor about yet another wave of reshoots floated like a cloud over the set, creating paranoia about whether anyone's hard work would survive the final cut. Then came the bombshell that seemed to put everything in perspective. Disney was supposedly contemplating a major shift in release strategy, including talk of keeping Snow White 5 off Disney Plus indefinitely. Whether driven by budget concerns or brand protection, this rumor upped the stakes yet again. At first, Snow White 2025 was slated to enchant audiences in 2024. But as turmoil escalated, executives kicked the release date further down the road, settling on 2025. Officially, they claimed the film needed more time to reach its full potential. Unofficially, scuttlebutt pointed to a swirl of negative buzz so potent that Disney worried about a financial and reputational catastrophe. The logic seemed to be, if they postponed it long enough, maybe people would forget the controversies. But in today's hyper-connected world, controversies rarely fade away quietly, especially ones involving a legendary Disney title. By the time they nailed down 2025, the rumor mill had churned out a new shocker. Snow White 2025 might never appear on Disney Plus, at least not in the near future. Some industry watchers saw it as a cost-cutting measure. Maybe Disney felt it couldn't recoup the film's astronomical budget through streaming alone. Others suspected a bigger fear, that hosting a high-profile flop on their own platform could tarnish the entire Disney brand. It's no secret Disney Plus thrives on offering a unified collection of cherished classics, from The Little Mermaid to Beauty and the Beast. Imagine the public relations headache if one of their marquee remakes was so mired in controversy that featuring it prominently felt like a liability. Leaked internal communications supposedly hinted that top brass were in panic mode. They knew skipping Disney Plus would raise eyebrows and spark new headlines like, "Disney disowns its own princess." But they feared tarnishing the platform image even more. The possibility of a smaller or delayed streaming release loomed large, fueling online chatter that Snow White 2025 might quietly appear on other platforms, or vanish for a while after its theatrical run. For Rachel Zegler, this prospect felt like a personal blow. Landing a lead role in a beloved franchise often cements an actor's place within the Disney stable. Think Emma Watson with Beauty and the Beast. But if the higher-ups pulled the rug out from under Snow White 2025, it could derail her trajectory before it even truly began. As for Gal Gadot, with her established stardom, she could likely weather a flop and move on unscathed. The big question was, How would it reflect on Disney's long-term strategy of remaking its animated classics? And did this fiasco foreshadow bigger issues within the studio's approach to modernizing well-loved stories? With each passing day, tension ballooned for both leads, albeit in very different ways. Rachel Zegler stood at a precarious juncture in her rising career. Before Snow White 2025, many saw her as a breakout star destined for Hollywood's top tier. Yet this production threatened to recast her as a controversial figure who criticized Disney traditions and tangled with co-stars. If the film bombed or never got a proper streaming showcase, her prospects might be impacted in ways neither she nor her agents anticipated. Gal Gadot, on the other hand, had less to lose in the grand scheme of things. She'd already cemented her name through major franchises and iconic roles. A single misfire wouldn't sink her brand. Still, the swirl of negative press around on-set feuds risked chipping away at her reputation for warmth and professionalism. Some fans started questioning whether her improvisations had sabotaged a pivotal sequence meant to foreground Snow White's growth. Even if Gadot emerged largely intact, the friction could leave a stain on her public image. Behind closed doors, Disney's leadership grappled with a larger existential dilemma. How does a mega company revered for polished, family-friendly magic handle a meltdown of this scale? Retooling classic fairy tales to appeal to modern audiences has long been their bread and butter. But as Snow White 5 demonstrated, pushing for bold changes can alienate fans who cherish the originals. Moreover, star controversies, conflicting creative visions, and repeated script flips aren't the kind of synergy any brand wants. By this point, some Disney loyalists were lamenting the state of the remake. Longtime enthusiasts who grew up with the original's gentle spirit felt the new adaptation had lost that spark. Meanwhile, younger fans were often split. Some appreciated a bolder, modern take. Others found it preachy or heavy-handed. End result was a fractured audience, with no clear consensus on who this movie was truly for. After the fiasco-laden fortress scene was scrapped, the cast's morale dipped so low that stories of people leaving set in tears became commonplace. Producers tried to rally everyone, promising the final cut would be a fresh classic, but many privately doubted it. Online debate only worsened the mood, as every leaked rumor sparked new waves of YouTube commentary and social media rants. If Disney once hoped secrecy would quell outside scrutiny, that ship had sailed. All eyes were now fixed on the battered production, waiting to see if it would sink or somehow reach the shore. With the release date crawling closer, two parallel narratives emerged. One side insisted Snow White 2025 could still triumph if it got an 11th hour facelift and a clever marketing push that framed the controversies as overblown. Perhaps a robust theater turnout would silence the naysayers, followed by a triumphant streaming debut to prove everyone wrong. Under that scenario, Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot might even appear side by side again, graciously downplaying rumors of any feud. The other side was less optimistic. They believed the negativity surrounding the film had already hardened public sentiment. Even if the final product managed to be entertaining, the discourse might remain fixated on how it deviates from the original, or how certain cast members publicly disparaged the 1937 classic. Plus, the possibility of skipping Disney Plus altogether only added an extra layer of strangeness. What does it say about confidence in the film's performance if the studio itself wavers on giving it a star platform? Industry speculation went wild. Some said Disney might consider a limited theatrical run to fulfill contractual obligations, then bury the movie for a time until the storm died down. Others whispered about a soft release on Disney Plus, without the usual fanfare, 6 months or a year later, hoping the controversies would fade. But the longer the drama lingered, the more it risked overshadowing any genuine artistic merit the film might have. Rachel Zegler, in particular, found herself in an odd position. She had fought passionately to reshape Snow White into a more contemporary figure, only to see her efforts overshadowed by swirling drama. If the final result fails, critics will likely pin at least part of the blame on her outspoken interviews. If it succeeds, she might still struggle to distance herself from the negativity that hounded this production. It's a lose scenario. In many eyes, unless the finished movie sparkles so brilliantly that audiences can't help but forgive, or at least ignore, the controversies. Yet Hollywood is full of surprise turnarounds. If the film does find its stride against all odds, Snow White 5 could go from pariah to underdog champion. Sometimes a rocky production yields unexpected hits, forging a narrative of overcoming behind-the-scenes chaos. And in that best-case scenario, both Zegler and Gadot could reclaim some measure of acclaim, rebranding themselves as artists who rose above pettiness to create something meaningful. The saga of Snow White 2025 is a testament to how rapidly a dream project can morph into a high-stakes nightmare. Cancelled premieres signaled trouble, Rachel Zegler's remarks ignited fan outrage, and persistent on-set tensions spotlighted a deeper clash in creative visions. Script rewrites and reshoots further drained resources, fracturing morale until hardly anyone knew if the final product made sense anymore. Then came the possibility that Disney, the very studio that birthed Snow White into global fame, might reject its own remake on Disney+. For many, the question is simple. Can a film with so much baggage still capture the magic that made the original a timeless favorite? Some argue that updating fairy tales is vital to keep them relevant for new generations, while others see the changes as a betrayal of cherished heritage. Regardless, Snow White 2025 stands at a crossroads. Will it rise above the controversies, or will it serve as a cautionary tale for how not to handle a classic? For Rachel Zegler, this role was supposed to catapult her into Disney royalty. For Gal Gadot, it was another chance to demonstrate her versatility and star power. For Disney, it was a massive gamble that might shape how future remakes are tackled. Ultimately, the movie's fate lies with an audience that has watched these controversies play out in real time. One thing is certain: Snow White 2025 won't slip silently into the night. Too many eyes are on it, too much money is at stake, and too many reputations hang in the balance. Whether this adaptation soars or stumbles, it's already become an emblem of Hollywood's modern predicament, balancing cherished history with evolving social norms, high expectations with star conflicts, and creative ambition with corporate caution. As the final release date creeps up, viewers are left to wonder, will the storybook magic survive, or has this fairy tale already been lost to the swirl of controversy? Only time will tell, and that suspense alone might keep the conversation buzzing. Till we see the film for ourselves, we can only guess if Snow White 2025 will rewrite history or become yet another chapter in the long scroll of cinematic misfires. Stay tuned, the show is far from over.